Welcome to Overwhelmed to Overcomer podcast with coach, encourager, and strategist Anna McLaughlin. If you're a Christian woman who has big dreams rooted in an even bigger God, but most days those dreams feel completely out of reach, trust me, I get it. As a homeschooling mama of 4, entrepreneur, investor, and all around wearer of many hats, I am right there with you. And yet, the Lord invites us to live out our God given purpose now in the midst of the madness. So, let's explore together how we can know our calling and walk in it today with clarity, with courage, with each other. It's time for you to live the life you love and love the life you live. Let's do this thing.
Hey there, friend. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to be talking about success. And I'm just going to start with a little definition. As a classical conversations girl, classical homeschooling girl, defining your terms is very important. And really, for any believer, it's important that we define our terms, that we know what we're talking about. So when I talk about success, I'm going to keep it really simple and just say that that for the purposes of this conversation, success is really doing what the Father has called you to do with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength, being faithful in what He has given you. It's the thing we always talk about in here. It's stewardship, living the life of Matthew 25, where we are faithful in little, set over more, and entering into the joy of our Master as a result. Let's do this thing, okay? All right. So, as most of you know, we have a beach house. We are under new management as of beginning of September, for which I am so excited. This woman that's supporting us knows her stuff. She's helping us make it the house that I always wanted it to be, with just the little touches and the comforts and the well-stocked kitchen and the like, just can we give people more than 2 rolls of toilet paper, please? Like, I would just like to do that. Actually, it was one roll of toilet paper, one paper towel, and they threw away our former company. God love them. They threw away like hand soap and dishwashing liquid that got left behind. So everybody had to buy their own for like a 2-day stay. It drove me bonkers. So it's this wonderful new setup. It's so precious. Actually, I need to tell you this. It's 20% off right now, but you can always direct book with me, which is close to whichever number ends up being best. That's the one we'll do for you. So make sure you're connecting with me. Make sure you are getting your stay on at the beach in Oak Island with us. And it's just a beautiful time of year to go. So with all of that, we've been going back and forth a lot more than usual to help get things ready, which means that I get to listen to audiobooks. And my favorite audiobooks to listen to in the whole wide world are by Malcolm Gladwell. He has the soothing voice and the most compelling ideas. On my last trip out, I listened to Outliers, ate the whole book in just one drive up, a drive up and half of a drive back. Outliers is all about what truly sets apart the success stories. The Bill Gateses and of course, we may have some opinions on him, but nonetheless, super wealthy and by the world standards, quite set apart in many ways. And the pro hockey players and the top lawyers and all of these different people that you look at and you just say, okay, wow, they are just a cut above the rest as far as what they've been able to accomplish. And we talked about this in here a couple of times, but I listened to the whole book recently, and so it's fresh in my mind. And here's what is so compelling. We think that there's just some kind of divine kiss on the foreheads of these folks. We think that there is just this set apartness that was preordained because they were just special. And the narrative has a tendency to even say that. We look at like the stories that are told about the heroes in our lives, and from the beginning there's this sense of, the parent says, I just always knew they were different, and gosh, from the time they were a toddler, they were so excited about such and such thing, and I just always knew they were going to become something. And yet the truth of the matter, when you dig into the details, is what tends to set people apart is not quite so obvious. Malcolm Gladwell has this beautiful phrase at the end where he kind of sums up the whole book. We're going to give you the phrase and then we're going to dig in a little bit deeper into the practicalities. Success is a gift. Successful are those who have been given opportunities and who have had the strength and presence of mind to seize them. A twofold recipe. I'm going to give it to you again. Success is a gift. Successful are those who have been given opportunities and who have had the strength and presence of mind to seize them. In the book, Malcolm Gladwell talks about this brilliant man named Chris, and I forget his last name. He is so bright that he understands complex concepts far and away above even his professors, but he doesn't finish college. He writes these treatises that are deeply compelling, but it doesn't look like they're ever going to get published. He ends up working kind of menial jobs, barely making ends meet, scraping by. These are the kind of people, he is the kind of person that you think you're just going to uncover somehow. Surely we're going to find these guys and promote them up to the place that they need to be promoted. But what we find by digging into outliers is that's not typically what happens without another piece of the formula. We need not only these qualities, and we're going to get into those qualities in a minute, but we also need the opportunity. We need that special blessing. And we don't always know what it's going to be beforehand. There's this really interesting segment of the book where it talks about this compelling anomaly in professional hockey, which is that if you look at the birth dates of the top hockey players, of the pro hockey players, they are inordinately between January and March, or maybe April. And so you'll see the vast majority are in the first quarter of the year. And then by far the least likely to make it to the pros are people with birthdays after the summertime. Like September, October, November, December, forget about it. Almost impossible. Why is this? Because hockey starts pre-selecting and promoting people from a very young age, especially in Canada. So in Canada, which is where, that's where hockey's like the big time. When you're like 7, 8, 9, I'm gonna botch the details a little bit, but the premise is what's important for our purposes. So when you're still relatively young, you are put in age leagues based on the calendar year. So I want you to think about anybody that's got kiddos. What does a newly minted, so someone with it, so say January, you've got to turn 10 sometime in the calendar year. Okay. So newly minted 10-year-old turned 10 January of that year. How does he compare in size, in strength, in dexterity, in competency, in confidence, in ability to communicate and to understand the coach's instruction? How does he compare to someone who turns 10 in December? Almost a full year's difference. Think about the developmental strides that are taken during that year. And so when they're comparing the whole group of these going to turn 10 in this calendar year kids, who's going to get selected for the premium team and the travel league and the extra ice time and the extra travel time and the extra attention from coaches? It's going to be the ones that are older. And time and again, we find that that's exactly what happened. Now, Malcolm Gladwell makes this point. And there's a reason we're going into all of this, because ultimately the goal always in here is let's be faithful, let's be brave, and let's belong with the Father. Those are the threefold things that we're doing in here. And they all lead to the same place, which is glorifying God and enjoying him forever, which is, according to the Westminster Catechism, those guys are no slouches. They know what they were talking about. That is the chief end of man. In other words, that is our life's work. That's what we're all about. That's the point of our lives, to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. Okay. So part of how we do that is to understand what it takes for us to be faithful, for us to be, by our definition in this call, successful. It's not a call, it's a podcast, wherever we are right now. Okay, so are those early 10-year-olds better hockey players by definition than the younger guys? No, right? Give those guys another 11 months. Some of them are going to be just as good, if not better. And so, by definition, then, the Pro Hockey League is actually missing out on talent. Oh, because this is so important. Okay, so it's opportunity, and it's the qualities, it's the abilities. But that's important, as I said. Okay, we're going to get to that. Okay, so these guys, it's not, we think, oh, there's just something about them. They're just better. Bill Gates, he just got computers. He just understood. No. He had access to a mainframe computer that offered virtual online coding. You used to have to bring these cardboard placards in and submit them to someone, and then the code would run. And if it worked, then you'd get to see the outcome that you wanted. But if not, you had to go all the way back through all the cardboard codes, and you'd have to like get a time slot, and it could be weeks before you get your code run. He ended up going to a school where the PTA moms like just decided to give the kids access to they bought a computer basically with their money from their raffles and all of that. Obviously a really nice school. Okay, right? So like that's why. That's why he became a coder, and he was born at the perfect time where just when the personal computer revolution was taking off, he was a young adult, not yet married and kind of with all the responsibilities and obligations, and we need the 401k and the benefits, and sorry, just stick with the job that you don't love, nor too young to miss the wave because he was still in high school. He was at the perfect time, like 18 to 21 years old, to say, yeah, I'll give it a go, see if I can create something out of this idea that I have. Okay. So too with the hockey players, we think, oh, well, we're just going to find the talent. But because these boys are getting selected and put in different tracks so early, there are these younger guys, maybe with just as much talent and raw ability. But, and here's the ability piece, because they are too small compared to their peers in the same age group, they are set aside. And here's the kicker. It's not raw talent that determines how competent you are, how good you are. You have to put in the time. And I forget who did the study, but Malcolm Gladwell, of course, like codified it in this book. It takes about 10,000 hours to become a master at something. Well, who's going to get the ice time? It's the travel league. It's the best. It's the kids with birthdays from January to April, by and large. Who's not going to get that time? It's the guys with the fall and winter birthdays. October, November, December, they're barely ever going to make the cut. And as time goes on, the gap between the haves and the have-nots grows broader and wider and wider. Okay? Now, why am I talking to you about hockey and Bill Gates, Steve Jobs by extension? There's also a whole thing about being the child of an immigrant and what that creates as far as the work ethic. So why are there such discrepancies? We think it's like there's something innately in them, right? There's something innately in Bill Gates and in Steve Jobs and in these hockey players and in these lawyers and in these different categories of people, because they talk about like certain types of law and why certain lawyers, even from different backgrounds, end up having these opportunities. It's because they put the time in. Like first they get the opportunities, yes. So we tend to think that we just have something innately in us that's going to make us better at something or worse at something. But what was uncovered in the course of this book that I think is so important for us to recognize is, yes, there are these discrepancies, But once the discrepancies, but like oftentimes it's not that initial discrepancy that's so great. It's what happens afterwards. It's the access that is given. It's the opportunity to do something over and over and over again. Actually, there's a really interesting story where the Beatles, there was this biography on them where it said they actually weren't that great before they had this one opportunity, which was they were invited because of this random connection between Hamburg, Germany, and Liverpool. There was some sort of type of environment where there were these shows that were put on for 8 or 9 hours a day. You would play as a band for 8 or 9 hours a day at this location for a number of months. And the biography says the Beatles weren't that great when they first came to Hamburg, but then they had the opportunity to play for thousands of hours over the course of, I think, a year that they were there. They logged in, I think they did 1,200 shows. I think that was the metric. They logged 1,200 shows in a very short period of time. And Malcolm Gladwell says that's more shows than some artists do in their whole career. And the Beatles did it in a matter of months or years. And how did they come back? They were a well-oiled machine. Because that much volume, that much repetition, 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 it smooths out the bumps. So listen, here's why this is all in here. It took a minute to set, but it was important. How are we going to be faithful in this life? How do we walk out our version of success, which is doing what the Father called us to do with all of our hearts? We move our feet. Once again, we move our feet. And I'm going to call you back to an episode that we did, I don't know, a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. We talked about, it's the laying down perfect conversation. We talked about that Bible verse that says, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect, is what Christ said in Matthew 5. Okay? And the context in which he was speaking was about how we love. Imagine if you logged 10,000 hours of loving, laying down your life, serving your neighbor, loving your enemy, praying for those who persecute you, again and again and again. Show up, serve. Not the doormat serving, not the I really hate this with everything in my heart and soul, and I'm kind of bitter about it. But the Lord Jesus, I kind of hate this, transform me. This feels hard and stretching. Help me love here. Sometimes it feels like it's going to break me in half. Make me a minister of your gospel in this moment, no matter what it costs. Can we become pros there? Because here's what we do in the church. We'll look at someone and we'll say, oh, you are so much better at serving than I am. Oh, you're so much more loving than I am. You're so much more patient than I am. You know what cracks me up? Homeschool mamas out there. How many times have you heard, I could never do what you do? Me either. Me either. I actually cannot. My best description for our homeschool journey in the early years was a bloodbath. That's what I called it. It was like a bloodbath. It was like a war zone. It was so chaotic. It was so stressful. I lost my marbles constantly. Has it gotten easier? Not necessarily. In some ways, yeah, but some ways it's harder. Because they ask bigger questions and there's more to navigate and the stakes are higher. We got middle schooler now. But I've stretched. And we decided from the beginning, this homeschool thing is about mutual sanctification. Because here's the deal. Someone's got to be the first one. And if we choose to kick the can down the road, then what we're effectively saying is, well, I don't want to, and I'm not telling you to homeschool. You know what that thing is that you're tempted to kick down the road. If I say it's too hard, I can't do it. What I'm effectively saying is, kiddos, your turn. I'm out. You got to carry this load. I'm not doing it. Because what we won't stretch into, if our children feel called to it, they're going to have to do it. It really kind of like it, I took it, it took me a while to wrap my brain around it. I would watch my friends and think, how come they can just do things that I can't do? They'd whip up meals, they'd cart the kids around graciously, they would, they would have Bible verses all over the place memorized, they'd do devotionals, and it just kind of came to them, it seemed, second nature. You know what I realized? The Lord gave me this, and it was such a gift. He said they're second generation, third generation, some of them fifth, sixth generation believers. It's in the water. They've been watching Bible studies since they couldn't even speak. They've been having family devotionals since they were in diapers. Of course, they've got an idea of where to start. We made it all up in our house. We didn't do Bible studies. We attended church, but it wasn't, I grew up in a non-Christian home. How do you be faithful? I don't know. But we're really trying to figure it out in our house so that our children have a starting point, right? When it came to learning how to read the Bible, I didn't have anyone to model after. Nobody was reading the Bible in my house. By God's grace, my dad came to do so before he passed, but that I was already out. I was already grown. Wherever you are on the front lines, I just want to offer this. When you look around and it looks like it's coming so much easier to everybody else, don't miss. What did Malcolm Gladwell say? Successful are those who have been given opportunities. Just let that sink in for a minute. There are some places where, friend, you have been given opportunities. Maybe there are some places where you have not, that you get to give them to your children. When you're on the front lines and forging a new path, it ain't going to look the same as the people who already had the path forged for them. They're going to march a straighter line, and that's the point. It's okay. There's this great podcast episode. I've talked about it in here before, I'm sure, because it's so tender to me and so dear to me, and the Lord just brought it to my mind. There's a podcast called What Have You? Rachel Jankovic and Rebecca Merkel, they're sisters. And they had an episode called The Champagne Pour. They were talking about this concept of when you are the first one to learn, and what they were talking about was homemaking skills. First one to learn how to sew, you're the first one to learn how to bake sourdough bread, whatever it might be. And they talked about the challenge of that, but then how there doesn't have to be another one after you. Like, okay, you learn it first, and then you have this wisdom to pass on to the next. And so think about those champagne towers in and at like a nice wedding venue. What happens? The caterer stands on a step ladder and starts pouring champagne into the top glass. And from that top glass, it flows to the next and the next and the next. And it's a more seamless transition because of the one at the top, sharing what they learned, passing it down, passing it down, passing it down. But the Lord gave me this. I'm almost positive he gave it to me. I don't think it was in the episode itself. The Lord said, don't forget how sweet is the connection between the Father, the benefactor, the giver of life, and that first glass. If you're on the front lines, that's you. Who taught me how to read the Bible? Jesus. Step by step, day by day, putting people in my life. Yes, lots of wisdom from, mentors or friends or a random show on television or drawing a correlation, kind of like I'm talking about with you in here. But it was he who was my teacher. It was he who was loving me through moment by moment, step by step. Such a gift. So too for you. Wherever you're on the front lines, recognize it may take a while for you to log your 10,000 hours, but those hours don't disappear with you. Think about all the families where it's like, oh, I'm a lawyer because, it's like, because my dad's a lawyer. I'm in Hollywood because my dad's in Hollywood. it feels quite possible, an easy step into what you've seen modeled before. Now, we can't catch everything. If our families speak a foreign language, but they don't speak it in front of us or help us learn it, yeah, we're going to have to do the hard work. It's not like we pass the bar just because our dad was a lawyer. We have to go to law school and study. We have to do the things. But it feels so much more accessible. Don't let that knock you down. Because here's the thing, you get to carve the path for your people. What better context to do that in than the faithfulness of God? Now listen, as Malcolm Gladwell says, success is forged of two things. Successful are those who have been given opportunities and who have had the strength and presence of mind to seize them. In this conversation in here, you, my friend, you have the strength and presence of mind to seize the opportunities you've been given. You may be carving new paths, but I'll tell you what. What opportunities have you been given? Every single one the Father wants you to have, every one. Some of them might be hard. Some of them might not look like they're wrapped up in the package that you want. But He has given you those opportunities. And He has given you the will. What is it? To work and to do according to His good pleasure. Okay, friend, I had a Bible verse come to mind. I was like, what am I talking about right now? For it is God who works in you to will and to do in order to fulfill His good purpose. There's a version that says, I think, according to His good pleasure. Okay? And the context of that verse, it's Philippians 2. Paul says, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to do according to His good pleasure. In this version, it says to will and to act in order to fulfill His good purpose. But I think that's the way the version that's in my mind is going. So what? Do everything without complaining, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. So we're going to be faithful, okay? We're going to take what He's given us. We're going to say, okay, maybe I'm carving a new path here. Maybe I look around me and I see other people. I'm like, gosh, I'll be honest, friend. Sometimes I sit there and I'm like, I like, I feel like we're just digging out all the foundations and having to start over. I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to do marriage. I didn't know how to do children. I didn't know how to do relationships. I didn't know how to do vocation. I didn't know how to do Bible or Jesus or church or, community. All these things, front lines. But I got the first pour from the Father. And He has been the one who shepherded me step by step. So if you're feeling that at all, any certain kind of way, just know you might be the foundation builder in your family. You might be the point of redemption in your family line, as I was called to be. I would hazard a guess that in some ways you probably are, because that's why you're here. We tend to find people who kind of match us, right? It's like, that's so familiar to me. We're working it out together in here. I'm here for it. I hope you are too. It's okay. There's grace for it. My husband and I call it being a rice and beans generation. We're kind of like the spiritual version of the immigrants working the laundromat job, building their business, blood, sweat, and tears, working it from the ground up. And as Malcolm Gladwell talks about, one of the most powerful starts you can have is by having immigrant parents, because there's that work ethic, there's that sense of duty and obligation, there's that sense of standing on the shoulders of those who came before. And it is their children that are, by the world's definition of success, but again, here we're all about the spiritual definition of success. But by the world's definition of success, they're the doctors, they're the lawyers, they're the judges, they're the people that are in the positions of power. Embrace your role If you're on the front lines, if you're the first of the champagne pour, say thank you. Do it with all your heart and soul. And look forward to the day when you see your children stand on your shoulders. They won't have to fight the battles that you did. They'll have their own. But you will know, I purchased that for you through Christ's blood. Ultimately, he purchases everything, but he lets us take a part. Oh, yeah, I fought a battle on that front, so you didn't have to. Your children, your grandchildren, receiving the inheritance that you directly through the Father's care obtained. Think about those places. Maybe it feels a little rough out there. You're fighting hard. And through this perspective, lean in. Decide today it's worth it. Now let's flip to the other side. And so too, recognize the places where you have been given opportunities. Think about those. I can think of some myself. And recognize and own your role as someone who, as Malcolm Gladwell puts it, has the strength and presence of mind to seize those opportunities. There's light and shade, both. The places to fight and the places to say thank you for the path that was already carved. Friend, today's the day. View your life from this context. Go out. Be faithful. Be faithful in all he has given you, so that one day he will look at you, he will say, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in little, I will set you over more. Enter into the joy of your master. All right. That's what I have for today, friend. Thanks so much for being here. Shoot me a message. Let me know what stuck out to you. Are you reading Outliers now? It's good. There's so many stories I didn't even tell you. Until next time, as always, you got this because he's got you.
Friend, thank you so much for listening to this most recent episode of Overwhelmed to Overcomer. So listen, the whole idea behind this mission is that when we endeavor to be brave with our lives, we need to do it together. Belonging is key. So if you resonated with the message from this episode, share it with a friend. Do it together. Thank you again, and never forget, you've got this because he's got you.